This outcome was never intended for this place. Not within the most prosperous nation on the planet. Not in a society that counts its wealth in trillions and identifies as the home of great chance. Yet throughout America, basic survival has turned into a full-time struggle. People are toiling longer and earning more on paper, yet they are falling further behind. Housing costs swallow entire salaries. Medical assistance is ignored as if it were a luxury. Food is carefully divided. Borrowed money replaces actual wealth. This is not a brief downturn. This is not a small dip in the market. It is a quiet breakdown occurring right before our eyes. And the most terrifying detail is not the severity of the situation. It is how routine this has begun to feel. Normal existence did not fall apart in a single moment. It failed slowly through the structure and then all at once. For many decades, security followed a clear plan. Work full-time, pay every bill, save a small amount, and move forward. That plan no longer operates. What failed was not effort or the desire to work. What failed was the basic calculation. The price of simply being alive began to grow faster than pay in ways most individuals did not catch until nothing functioned any longer. Since the year 2020, the cost of goods has risen by nearly 25%. However, average pay did not increase anywhere near that level. The price of a place to live shot up far beyond what people make, with national rents increasing 30 to 40% in just a few years. Interest rates for homes more than doubled, adding $1,000 to $1,500 to monthly costs for the same property value. Health insurance costs grew faster than the general rise in prices, with individual plans now often costing more than $1,200 to $1,800 every month. None of this occurred slowly enough for individuals to adjust. It happened at a pace that budgets could not handle. This is the moment the standard way of life broke. It is when fixed bills became larger than pay before life even started. It is when paychecks arrived and were already spent on old costs. It is when making more money no longer provided relief but only delayed the pressure. It is when survival costs stopped being optional and started acting like a heavy debt. This break is so disturbing because it denies everything people were told. A high level of learning was supposed to keep you safe. Working all day was supposed to be enough. Professional roles were supposed to offer protection. Instead, safety became a fragile condition. Missing one payday, becoming ill once, or facing one rent increase can end it all. The system no longer takes the blow. It makes the blow harder. This is not a problem of lifestyle choices. This is the structure closing in. Essentials, housing, nutrition, insurance, and power grew until they pushed out everything else. People did not stop spending on extra things because they lost control. They stopped because there was nothing left after paying to exist. When food, rent, and healthcare take up 70 to 80% of the money you bring home, choice is nothing but a dream. That is why this time feels different from the hard times of the past. In previous cycles, individuals spent less and waited for better days. This time there is no room left to cut. The extra money is gone. The safety net is gone. The promise that hard work leads to a better life is gone. And once that promise fails, everything else follows. This is because when regular life stops working, people do not revolt immediately. They change their lives. They wait, they borrow, and they accept less. That quiet change is what allows a broken system to keep going right up until the bad results can no longer be hidden. This is the base of every event that follows. Because when staying alive becomes too expensive, work is no longer enough. And when work is no longer enough, the entire structure begins to bend under its own weight. Once the math failed, the trap shut tight. When pay stopped covering the basics, life did not just become more difficult. It became a prison of the system. Homes, food, and healthcare stopped acting like regular costs and started acting like a heavy tax. You pay them first, or you cannot function at all. Everything else comes second, if there is anything left. The cost of a home is the heavy weight. National average rents are now around $2,000 a month, but in many cities they have reached $2,500 to $3,000 without offering more space or better quality. Owning a home did not get harder because people became lazy. It became impossible because monthly bills exploded. A house that once cost $1,600 a month now needs $2,800 to $3,200 at the rates of today. The house did not change. The pay did not double. The cost did. Food followed the same path. Grocery prices rose about 25 to 30% since 2020, but food is not a choice. Individuals cannot wait for the price to drop. When basic food costs more, the cut does not come from luxury. It comes from the amount, the quality, and the health value of the meal. That is how survival slowly wears down, not through a total lack of food, but through constant loss. Then there is healthcare, the most upsetting cost because it punishes the need for help. Plans from work often cost $600 to $900 a month for one person. Market plans often land between $1,200 and $1,800 before the insurance even starts to pay. One emergency visit can wipe out months of savings. The smart choice in this system is not to get treated. It is to avoid the doctor. That is not healthcare. That is managing risk under great pressure. Here is where the trap closes. These costs do not change when your pay drops. They do not pause during a loss of work. They do not care about your effort or your school level. Homes, food, and insurance take your pay first without asking. When those three things take 60 to 75% of your pay, a budget is no longer a tool and becomes a fantasy. This is why the old promise fails here. Work may still bring in money, but survival takes it away immediately. There is no path to success and no safety cushion. Every month starts back at zero. Once the cost of survival wins, the way people act changes forever. Spending stops. Savings disappear. People stop taking risks. They do not stop because they are bad with money. They stop because the system gives them no room to breathe. That is the trap of survival costs. It does not just take your money. It takes your ability to move up. Once the costs of staying alive take control, work is supposed to be the way out. That was the promise. It does not work anymore. Jobs used to turn hard work into a stable life. Today, jobs turn hard work into just staying where you are. Paychecks arrive and then vanish into fixed bills. Everything is back at zero before life even starts. This is not a problem with the desire to work. It is a system where the worker has lost all power. People produce 60% more than they did in the late 1970s, yet actual pay has barely moved. That missing money did not vanish, it was taken. Large companies made record amounts of money while the share for the worker got smaller. The result is an economy where working more does not mean you get ahead. It only means you fall behind more slowly. This is why work hours keep growing. Working one full-time job is no longer enough. Working extra hours became normal. Second jobs became common. Having 3 ways to make money is no longer about being successful. It is about defense. But adding more work does not change the result when pay stays low while costs stay high. You cannot run faster than a system where pay grows slowly while basic needs grow twice as fast. Even jobs for professionals lost their power to protect. College degrees did not fail because they lost value. They failed because the ground beneath them fell away. Starting pay rose a little, but the things you need to do to get the job multiplied. Companies moved the danger onto the workers by cutting benefits and shortening contracts. The job still exists. The safety does not. What makes this stage dangerous is how hard it is to see at first. People think they are doing something wrong. They work harder. They give up their time. They trade their health for more hours. But being tired does not fix a broken system of exchange between work and life. A salary of $65,000 sounds good. After taxes, that is about $4,000 a month. After you pay for rent, insurance, power, food, and a car, what is left is often less than $500. That is not moving up. That is just holding on. This is the moment the mental deal breaks. When work no longer builds anything, people stop making plans. They stop saving. They stop taking chances. The economy does not just slow down, it becomes empty. People stop buying things not because they are afraid, but because there is nothing left to spend. And when work fails as a way out, the system brings in something else. It is not help or a fix. It is a temporary patch to keep things going. That patch is debt. When work stops being the way out, the system brings in a replacement to keep things moving. That replacement is not better pay or lower costs. It is debt. Borrowing money becomes the bridge between pay and survival. When paychecks can no longer cover the truth of life, debt fills the gap quietly month after month. This allows the dream of a normal life to continue. Groceries are bought with credit cards. Medical bills are put off. Rent is paid with plastic. Nothing is fixed, but the fall is delayed. This is not an accident. Debt for families in the United States is now more than $17 trillion. Credit card debt alone is over $1.3 trillion. High interest rates are no longer just for emergencies. They are a part of daily life. Debt is not being used to move ahead. It is being used just to stay alive. Here's the big shift. Pay used to pay for life directly. Now pay goes to the debt that paid for life earlier. This flip is a disaster over time. When interest grows faster than pay, the work you do in the future is already sold for a lower price. People are no longer working for a better future. They are working to pay for yesterday. Medical debt is the best example. The cost of healthcare does not care about your pay or if you are ready. One emergency can create a bill of $5,000 to $20,000 in one night. Insurance does not take away this risk. It just moves it around through fees and things it will not pay for. The smart move in this system is not care, it is waiting. Health becomes a math problem, not a human need. Credit cards finish the cycle. Small payments make it look like you can handle the debt, while locking families into a trap where money is always being taken. A debt of $10,000 can take over 10 years to pay off even if you pay every month. That is not borrowing. That is the slow theft of your future money. This is where control begins. Credit scores do not measure if you are a good person anymore. They measure if you follow the rules of the system. If you miss one payment, your ability to get a home, a car, or even a job becomes much harder. Debt does not just cost money. It rules how you act, and look at what disappears. Savings, the ability to move, and choices all vanish. When money goes to the bank before it reaches the person, the ability to survive a shock disappears. Any problem like losing a job or getting sick pushes a family into total ruin because there is no safety net. This is why debt hides the crisis instead of fixing it. It keeps the system moving for now, but it also makes sure the final crash is much worse. Debt cannot replace pay forever. Eventually, the interest is more than the work is worth. When that happens, people do not just fall behind. They become invisible in the numbers. They make too much money to get help, but too little to survive without borrowing. When debt is what holds life together, the official numbers are supposed to tell us how bad things are. But they do not. They hide the truth. The poverty line in the United States is not a real measure of suffering. It is a ghost from the past. It was made for a time when homes were cheap and food was a predictable cost. That world is gone, but the way we measure it never changed. Today, the official line for a family of four is just over $32,000 a year. That number says you can survive on $2,700 a month before taxes. In a world where rent alone is often $2,000, that math is a lie. That number does not describe a hard life. It describes starving. What is more dangerous is what this rule leaves out. The poverty line ignores the rising cost of homes, healthcare, childcare, and debt. It acts like costs from the past still exist and ignores the bills that rule life today. The result is a trick of the numbers. Millions who are struggling to survive are told by the government that they are not poor. This is how being functionally poor replaces being visibly poor. People make too much for help, but too little to pay their basic bills without a credit card. They are invisible to the systems that help, invisible in the news, and invisible to the leaders. But they are not rare. They are the people who do the work. Real studies show that for a family of four to be stable, they need $120,000 to $140,000 in many areas. That is not for a rich life. That is for rent, food, insurance, and a little savings. Compare that to the official line, and you can see how big the lie is. This gap explains why people feel so bad, but cannot say why. It is why full-time workers feel broke. It is why professionals feel stuck. It is why whole generations feel like they are failing even though they did everything right. The system tells them they are fine because the numbers say so. Their bank accounts say something else. And here's the main point. Debt fills the space created by this lie. If being poor was measured honestly, the crisis could not be ignored. Programs would have to grow and pay would have to rise. Instead, borrowing takes the pressure quietly while the official story says everything is fine. This is not a mistake. It is a choice by the system. By making the problem look small, the system avoids being blamed while moving the cost of survival onto the people through debt. The result is an economy where suffering is normal and the crash is delayed but not stopped. When the rules hide the truth, we must ask why. This did not happen by chance. The loss of the middle class was not a natural thing. It was planned through choices that moved the risk down to the people while moving the money to the top. The first break was when pay stopped growing along with the work being done. Since the 1980s, workers have done more, but pay has stayed flat. That extra value went to profits and the people at the top. This one change changed the life of every family forever. Then came the focus on stocks. Companies used their profits to make their stock price higher instead of paying their workers more. Trillions of dollars went to owners instead of workers. The middle class lost their pay growth and were told to invest in the market to make up for it. Then safety in old age was taken away. Guaranteed money for workers was replaced by individual accounts, where the worker takes all the risk. The danger of the market became a personal problem. Retiring stopped being a promise and became a gamble. At the same time, jobs were moved to other countries for cheaper labor. This did not just move factories. It broke the pay for whole industries. The power of the worker vanished. The middle class shrank because their work was no longer valued. As pay stayed the same, borrowing filled the gap. The debt of the nation grew along with the debt of the families. The value of the dollar went down. People did not feel rich. They just felt like they owed more. Then came the big crashes. In 2008, bad loans broke the housing market. Millions lost their homes. Banks were saved by the government. Assets were bought for cheap by the rich. Owning a home became harder and rents began to climb. Wealth did not reset. It moved to the top. The pandemic did the same thing, but even bigger. Trillions were put into the system, but the money went to those who already had assets. The stock market went up. Home prices jumped 40%. Pay stayed behind again. The gap got wider. Each step led to the next. Lower pay forced people to borrow. Borrowing hit the decline. A crash moved wealth up. The numbers hid the damage. The result is a hollow middle class, too rich for help, but too poor to be safe. When you take the middle out of an economy, the damage is not just an idea. It becomes something you can see and touch. This is the stage where the failure shows up on the streets. The most clear sign is people with no homes. This problem is at its highest level since the Great Depression. It is not because people stopped working. It is because the cost of a home broke away from the pay of the worker. Rents rose for years and then jumped again. Whole groups of people were priced out at once. When you cannot afford a place to live, it does not look like a disaster at first. It looks like people living with others or staying in places not meant for living. Over time, those temporary spots become permanent. At the same time, you see two things that do not belong together. You see a lot of something and a lack of it at the same time. Fancy apartments sit empty while the need for cheap homes is huge. New buildings cost $4,000 to $6,000 a month for a person who does not exist in large numbers. Buildings are empty not because we have enough homes, but because they cost too much. Money looks for a profit instead of giving people a place to live. The gap grows wider every year. Public space shows the pressure. Camps grow not because help went away, but because the number of people who cannot handle a problem keeps growing. When even a small issue like a car repair or a doctor bill pushes a family over the edge, the results show up on the sidewalks and in parking lots. This is not just about homes. The way people buy things is changing. Stores have fewer people. People stop buying things they do not need. When people stop spending because they have to, not because they want to, it means the money has stopped moving. The economy does not freeze all at once. It slowly empties out. Then the cities feel the strain. They have to pay more for cleanup and emergencies, while the money they get from taxes gets smaller. The system pays more to fix the symptoms, but has no money to fix the cause. This creates a loop. Things get worse, people leave, and there is less money to fix anything. There is also a change in how people think. When you see this every day, you stop expecting things to get better. You stop planning for the long term. You stop trusting the system. People stop thinking the future will be better than now. That is a smart way to think when hard work no longer makes you safe. This is not just happening in poor areas. It is happening near rich neighborhoods and big job centers. This matters. It shows the problem is everywhere. When the fall reaches the places that used to be safe, you can no longer deny it. You cannot blame the person when the same thing happens to everyone. You cannot call it a mistake when it happens everywhere. The same pressure exists. And once it is this big, the The system is in danger. You must either face the truth or keep trying to hide it while the pressure builds. History shows that hiding the truth does not bring safety. It only delays the final bill. For years, the system worked because people accepted it. They were told the hard times were temporary. But waiting only works if things get better. When rent goes up every year and pay stays the same, people stop believing. What is breaking now is not just hope. It is the truth of the system. The change did not start with a big idea. It started with math. When a family spends most of their money just to exist, the official story no longer matters. When health insurance costs $1,200 a month and rent is $2,500, you do not need a chart to see the problem. Your bank account already told you. That is why more people are speaking up. It is not because they are angry. It is because they can no longer pretend. The news says the economy is strong, but daily life is hard. The stock market is at a record high, but families are at their limit. The gap between what we are told and what we see is too wide. What is different now is that this feels permanent. In the past, people thought the hard times would end. This time they do not. Costs do not go back down. Debt does not go away. Homes do not become cheap again. The future does not look like it will help. That changes how people act. They stop waiting for things to get better and start just trying to survive. This is also why blaming the person no longer works. For a long time, struggling was seen as a personal fail. People were told to work harder or learn a new skill. That story falls apart when people who did everything right are in the same hole. When people with good jobs and degrees face the same struggle, the lie is over. It is not a personal failure. It is a failure of the system. A new line was crossed when fear took the place of hope. People stopped taking risks. They stopped believing that effort would pay off. That change in the mind matters more than any number. An economy runs on what people expect to happen. And now they expect nothing. Notice that there has not been a lot of reckless spending. People have been careful. They spent less. They changed their lives to handle the pressure before they ever said a word. That care is proof of how tired people are. It shows how much they took before they finally broke. What we see now is clarity. People understand that the old promises are gone. The system works only for those who are protected from the cost. Everyone else is being told to accept a hard life as normal. This is why the questions have changed. People are no longer asking when things will get better. They are asking why the system is built this way. That question comes from real life. And once enough people ask it, the trick is over. A society can handle hard times, but it cannot handle a lie that says the hard times are normal.